It's Linda K. That must be Linda Kuhnhart.
Yep.
Please let it be so. Here's Nate. Here's a phone number. Hi, Nate. All right, this phone number. God. Okay, let's see. You're muted, Nate.
Yeah, I see that. I'm just going to share my screen real quick to see if this works.
Okay.
PowerPoint. Oh, wait a second.
It's hard to hear you.
Okay.
Oh. It may be our speakers down. Say something now.
Hello?
Hello. Yeah, we got you. The phone number ending in 4090. Is that Peter?
Dan O'Neill.
Oh, Dan O'Neill. Hi, Dan. So good to hear your voice.
I know, I've been MIA.
All right.
I may try to get on the computer at a hard time, so I may end up shifting, but
Okay.
Can you see a PowerPoint on your screen?
Yes.
Okay.
I can too, Sylvia. I'm here. Dick Snow from Candia.
All right. I just wanted to test it. Thanks. It works.
Yay.
Hi, Dan O'Neill.
And there's Bill Jean. Hi, Bill.
Good afternoon or morning.
Yeah, you're kind of right on both counts. All well in Bedford, Bill?
Very good, thank you. Yes.
That's good. Here's your buddy, Bill DeShako, coming in. Morning, Bill.
Morning.
There you go. How are you, Bill?
I'm fine. Yourself?
Pretty good. Pretty good. You can see that Nate is at home today. One of the preschooler parents came down with COVID.
Great. Lucky you.
Yeah, that was not ideal, but so far so good. Although my daughter is under the full-on formal Department of Health quarantine, so the no symptoms or anything yet. So far so good, but we have to wait 5 to 7 days before we get her tested, which will be later this week. So
Right.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
New experience for you, Nate.
It's definitely been a new experience. Yeah. keeping her occupied while my wife is here as well. So while we're both working, can be a bit of a challenge, but we're figuring it out.
Yeah. We have Al Hall in the room and he's a little bit closer so everyone can hear him today.
The masked man.
Yeah, since Al is closer, does he need to make sure he has the mask on?
It would be ideal.
I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I go in. Now let me get ready. I'll put a mask on when Dick Snow puts a mask on.
Dick is at home all alone. Morning, John. Good to see you. You are muted.
Thank you. Nice to see you also.
How's everything in Derry?
Chilly.
Yeah, we can't help it. We're heading in that direction, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
Yeah. All right. Oh, Chris Golan is way early. Hi, Chris, you're way early. You know what? I think I told you, Chris, 11:45. I meant 12:45.
That fits what is on my calendar, but
So sorry. I just
Oh, that's fine.
realized. Yeah.
okay.
You're welcome to listen in. It's going to be edge of your seat stuff because Nate is going to be talking and it's always exciting. But if you want to, do other stuff, but I'm fine with that. No problem.
Okay. So just to make sure that we're coordinating, because we do have some filings that are due in about 48 hours. So I probably will log off and make use of that time. If I log back in, am I able to share my screen or are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
All right. We'll see you in about an hour.
All right. I will log back in before 11:30. Sorry.
12:30. I know. I keep doing it too. All right. Let's see. I have to keep up. John O'Connor. I see Jeff is with us. Hi, Jeff. I saw your lips say good morning.
Good morning.
And we have Linda Kundhart, I believe, right, Linda? You are muted. Maybe Linda stepped away for a moment.
No,
Okay.
I do have a mic, which I usually have on off, but if you want to do the mute, then I can do that.
Who do you think John P. is? Do we know who John P. is? I don't know John P. You listen for the phone, Linda.
Hey, Sylvia, it's Peter Capano.
Hi, Peter.
Good to be here.
Good to have you. What happened to Nate? Nate disappeared. Is he?
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. You're over there now. Nate, any idea who a John P. would be?
Nope.
I don't trust it. They can call in.
Yeah, maybe have them call in.
Yeah. Barbara S., that's Barbara Salvatore.
And Art Rugg is here, Londonderry.
Hi, Art Rugg.
Hi, how's everyone doing?
Good. Hi, Barbara. Good to see you. You are muted.
Okay, how's that?
That's better. Good to see you.
Nice to see you. Happy Thanksgiving almost to everybody.
Hey, not yet. We're not even in November.
That's true, but we're going to get snow, they say.
That's true. Right on Trick or Treat Day for Newmarket. All right, we have a phone number. I will admit them. It's scary, but okay, let's see who this is.
I'm right here, Barbara.
All right, let's see. So the phone number ending in 4803, could you identify yourself, please?
Ray Clement,
Yay. Hi, Ray.
how are you?
Good. All right, John, someone named John P. is still hanging out in our waiting room and they can call the office because I do not trust them. And we don't want any excitement today. This is G-rated. Let's see, who else came? There's William Rose. Hi, William. And I saw the crew. My crew is Adam and Zach. Carl. Hi, Carl. Tim White. Hi, Tim. Mike Witten. Hi, Mike. Tom Clow from Ware. Hi, and Dave Pierce. And we have a whole crew. It's hard to keep up. Let's see. I've got, did I see Bob Cody?
Yes, I'm here, Sylvia.
Hi, Bob.
Hello.
Do we have Chester in the house? I don't think I've seen Chester. Oh, I have more. There's Brian from Londonderry. Oh, no, 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 no. Okay, everyone shut your eyes. I'd mistakenly picked. Oh, he has a picture. All right, John P., could you please introduce yourself? Because I'm not sure what community you're from.
Hey, I'm John Hiltz from Wyndham. I don't know why it's coming up John P. I'm using Zoom on my computer for the first time, so my name's goofed up.
Okay. All right, I'm sorry. I did not know who this was, so I wasn't letting you in, but I mistakenly hit you. Oh my God, not that I'm stressed about this at all. Nothing, no. Oh, God. All right, we have another Neighborhood Works.
Oh, is that, Jennifer Badney.
Yes.
Oh, okay,
Looks like, Barbara Griffin is logging in too.
okay. All right, so we have another phone number. Where was that phone number?
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet.
All right, I thought I saw a phone number. Oh, there's Barbara Griffin. Hi, Barbara. Good to see you. And everyone is muted. Ah, I got a wave. I saw your wave. And John P. is really John Hiltz. So I encourage, who's Jeff Porter?
Yeah, he's from Auburn. He's.
Auburn, okay. All right, we have a full house. We've got, I think that's Cutler Brown coming. Deb Munson, I saw.
Yeah.
All right, over here, we've got Tim White. We've got William Rose, Mike Witten. So Dean Williams. Oh, here comes Andrew Haddock. We're almost getting there, Jeff.
Very good.
Mark Sunan, aha. Yay, we have New Boston. And I believe those two, we have Arthur Rugg. I saw Brian. Hi, Brian. Okay, I'm not letting in someone named Owner. That's not happening. I think I just saw Jennifer Vadney. That's exciting. Hi, Jennifer. Good to see you.
Hi, nice to be here.
And Joanne Duffy, thanks for coming. So we definitely have Goffstown today.
Hi, Sylvia.
I think we can start, Jeff, because let's see, what's my time? 11:34, and we definitely have a quorum.
Very good. All right, the chair of the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission has found that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission and committees thereof are authorized to meet electronically. So first order is to call the order of the Metropolitan Planning Organization and to do a roll call simultaneously, I guess, with the approval of the meeting minutes from September 22nd.
Okay, we,
Have a motion on the meeting minutes?
before we do anything like that, I think we need to have a roll call, don't we?
Yes.
We were going to do that together, I guess. We have done that together.
All right, we're gonna do a roll call together. So Al Hall from Candia has
Well,
moved the
we need
minute.
a motion. Sylvia, do we need a motion first for the meeting minutes or?
Dave Pierce seconds.
So Al Hall moved the minutes and Dave Pierce seconded. So I'll go through the roll call to go through that. Is that good?
Good.
All right, and please forgive me if I didn't see you come in. So I have Jeff Porter from Auburn.
Aye.
Bedford, Bill DeShaco,
Aye.
Bill Jean,
Here and abstain from the minutes.
Barbara Salvatore.
Here and approve the minutes.
Anyone else from Bedford that I missed?
Charlie Fairman, I approve.
Oh yeah, you're the owner.
Yes, I can't change it for this meeting for some reason.
That is very strange.
Yeah.
I will make a note that you come in as owner.
Thank you.
All right, Candia, Al Hall. Rich Dick Snow,
Present and aye.
Chester, we have Andrew Haddock.
Present and yes.
In Chester, also Deb Munson.
Here, yes.
In Deerfield, we have Bob Cody.
Yes on both.
Derry, Jeff Moulton.
Here and yes.
John O'Connor.
Here and yes.
Anyone from Derry I didn't see. Okay, from Francistown, we have Linda Kuhnhart
Here and yes.
and Jennifer Vadney.
Here and abstain.
All right, from Goffstown, we have Joanne Duffy,
Here and approve.
Barbara Griffin.
To both. Here, whatever.
Okay, thanks, Barbara. David Pierce.
Vote yes on the minutes.
And in Hooksett, I saw Cutler Brown.
Here and abstain.
Anyone else from Hooksett I might have missed? No? Londonderry, I saw Brian Battaglia
Here and yes.
and Arthur Rugg.
I am here and yes.
And from Manchester, we have Peter Capano
I approve the minutes.
and Ray Clement
Here and yes.
and Dan O'Neill.
Here and abstain.
In New Boston, we have Mark Sunan. Just have to unmute Mark. I'm not letting in someone named P. Cakes.
How about that? Here and abstain.
Woohoo, progress. Thank you. And where we have Tom Clow.
Here, aye.
And in Wyndham, we have John Hiltz.
Present and yes.
Anyone from communities, any commissioners I may have missed? Okay, let's move to MPO, William Rose, DOT.
Here and yes.
Mike Witten.
Here and yes.
Anyone else I may have missed for a voting member? All right, that's it for this vote.
All right, very good. So on new business, I guess we do have a cancellation on the first agenda item for exit 4A. Do we know if that's rescheduled, Sylvia?
I don't know that it's rescheduled. just that it's been canceled. We will try to get them back. I know this is a topic of interest for our group, so we'll see what magic our friend Nate can do in convincing them to come and speak to our group.
It's almost apropos that they can't make it, huh?
Well, we had Bill Oldenburg lined up to be here, and unfortunately he needed to cancel before the meeting. So we'll talk with Bill and see if we can't get him lined up for the next meeting.
Could we do a special meeting with him? Exit 4A is relatively important.
I mean, that's something we could consider. I don't know, that there's necessarily enough content to warrant a special meeting, but we'll talk with Bill and see if the November meeting is a possibility, or if they feel like they have a lot of content they need to cover, then we can have that discussion with them as well.
Thank you.
All right, so moving on to the next agenda item is fiscal year 2023 to 2032 10-year plan update. Nate?
Can everybody see a slideshow on your screen?
Yes.
All right, good. So it looks like this is working.
Except
So
we see the presenter side, not the actual slideshow.
All right.
Yeah, it's
How do I-
showing like what the presenter wants to see.
How about that?
That's better.
I don't ever use presenter mode. I don't know why it defaults to that, but all right. This works better now?
Yes.
Okay. So we do have a number of important updates on the 10-year plan process that we'd like to go through for the next few minutes. So as a reminder, I think everybody knows, but we work with all of our partners at other regional planning commissions around the state collaboratively with the New Hampshire DOT every 2 years to develop the 10-year transportation improvement plan. So we're working right now and have completed our solicitation for projects for the fiscal year 2023 to 2032 10-year plan. So hard to believe we're looking out to 2032 already, but that's the time period we're looking at here. Just like 2 years ago, DOT has allocated $50 million for regional projects in this 10-year plan update cycle. And just like 2 years ago, our regional estimated allocation is $8.554 million. So a little over $8.5 million to program. And any new projects that are placed on the 10-year plan in this update cycle would generally be programmed for those final 2 years, what we call the out years of the 10-year plan. So in this case, that's 2031 and 2032 is where new projects would go in the plan. We have, at the end of July, we put out an announcement soliciting projects from our communities, all 14 of our communities in the region. And those project proposals were due back in the middle of September. And since the middle of September, we have been working on evaluating those projects and getting our ducks in a row to have engineering, scoping, and cost estimating work lined up for those projects. And our next kind of key deadline, which we'll talk about a little bit later, is at the beginning of November. We need to give DOT what I would call our short list of candidate projects. And we'll talk about what that short list is in a few minutes. So when we put out that project solicitation in late July, we did receive 7 different responses. One of those responses was that we had an existing 10-year plan project that requires some additional or supplemental funding. We knew about that project, so this is not a surprise. We'll talk about that in a moment. We had one existing 10-year plan project that was proposed to be advanced to an earlier year of construction, and then we had 5 new project proposals. So I'm going to walk through briefly these 7 different projects that we're looking at in this cycle, just in alphabetical order by community. So if you recall, 2 years ago, we have an existing 10-year plan project in the town of Bedford that was added, I think 3 10-year plan cycles ago. And so that project, we added some supplemental funding to it 2 years ago. If you recall, it's a project that's it's a bottleneck location on South River Road, which is US Route 3, from Hawthorne Drive to the airport access road. It's currently programmed for $13.27 million in year of expenditure dollars. And we know from our engineering cost estimate 2 years ago that the project is estimated to cost $16.4 million in current dollars. So this is as I mentioned, it's a bottleneck location. This would improve this segment of road to 4 12-foot travel lanes with a 14-foot median, 5-foot shoulders on the outside with 2-foot along the median, as well as a new 5-foot paved sidewalk on the east side of the road. So we know that project requires supplemental funding, and that's not a surprise to us. We've known about that since 2 years ago. And even 2 years ago, we mentioned that this would be something that we needed to look at again in this 10-year plan update cycle. We have a new project proposal in the town of Deerfield, and you see the intersection here. It's the intersection of Route 107, Candia Road, and Church Street. If you look at the left picture in this slide, you can see it from above, and it's definitely a strange little intersection with some extra conflict points and extra stop signs and a median island. And the proposal here is to convert this location to a roundabout intersection. And this project has been around in our long-range plan for some time, listed as a Deerfield Town Center improvement, but this is the first time that the project has been proposed to be advanced into the 10-year plan. So this is one of the locations that we want to learn a little bit more about and get some scoping and cost estimating assistance from our on-call engineer firm. So this is going to be something that we're assigning to them to take a deeper dive into looking at the feasibility and cost of this project. We know that similar roundabout conversions in New Hampshire generally cost between $1 million and $1.5 million. But there's some topography and kind of, potentially other tricky things related to this intersection that may have an impact on the ultimate cost. So we're going to assign that to our on-call engineer and do some more homework on this particular proposal. Moving on to the town of Derry, next in alphabetical order after Deerfield is the town of Derry, and we have a new project proposal here to extend the Derry Rail Trail from Madden Road, which is roughly the location of where the exit 4A connector road is, up north to the Londonderry town line. This is the final section, 1,900 feet, final section of rail trail to be completed within the town of Derry to make that link whole all the way to the town of Londonderry. This is part of the larger Granite State Rail Trail effort that is envisioned to connect everything from the Salem, New Hampshire state border with Massachusetts all the way up north to the Concord area and then west along the Northern Rail Trail to Lebanon. So this is one small piece of a much larger kind of statewide trail vision here. And this is another one that we're going to assign to our on-call engineering firm for scoping and cost estimating assistance. This is a fairly straightforward in terms of engineering, so we don't think it's going to require a whole lot of engineering work to make a trail connection in this area feasible. The one wrinkle here potentially is that a portion of this trail where the trail would go is privately owned and may require some right-of-way acquisition. Although the owner of this right-of-way is not considered to be adversarial to this project or adversarial to the town. So I think the private owner of this right of way may be, totally amenable to working out an arrangement to make this trail happen. At least that's our hope. And then also, depending on the cost estimate, this project could also qualify for Transportation Alternatives Program consideration. Obviously, here in the even years, we're in year 2020. Normally, in the even years, we're right about now working on TAP solicitation and project prioritization. Unfortunately, we don't know when the next TAP round is coming. It seems to have been delayed, and probably due to COVID and other constraints on the Department of Transportation at this point. But we're hopeful at some point in the coming months that there will be a new TAP program solicitation. And depending on the cost of this project, this may be one that could fit nicely into the TAP program in the future. Moving on to the town of Londonderry, next in alphabetical order, we have a project that is currently on the 10-year plan. We added this to the 10-year plan, I think 2 update cycles ago. This is the intersection of Route 28 and 128 in the town of Londonderry. You can see kind of a street view of it, as well as an overhead view of it above on the left. We added this project 2 update cycles ago as part of the 2019 to 2028 10-year plan. It is currently programmed for $1.67 million in construction in 2027. The town of Londonderry has requested this project be advanced to an earlier year of construction, although in a lot of cases, project advancements are difficult to accomplish without any offsetting concessions, as I would call them. Delaying another project or adding local funding to offset some of the federal funding. The 10-year plan is fiscally constrained year by year. So in order to advance something from 2027 to an earlier year, normally our colleagues at DOT would be looking for some sort of concession, delaying something else to keep that fiscal balance on a year-to-year basis. However, this is one that this project was added before the engineering scoping requirement was included in the 10-year plan process. So this is never, we have a concept that was developed about 10 years ago for what a reconfigured and signalized intersection of this location would look like. But that needs a little bit more homework. And in particular, as we've been looking at this project, even though the initial request from the town was to advance this project, this is one that we think may actually end up requiring some supplemental funding. In other words, some conditions have changed around that intersection that make the original concept that was developed about 10 years ago a little bit harder potentially to construct. In particular, if you're familiar with this location, this is an area where some storage facilities have been built right at this intersection that kind of constrains the original concept. So our on-call engineers are going to be looking closely at this intersection to see if that original concept still works. And it's entirely possible, and to some extent, we're expecting that the $1.67 million that's currently programmed in the 10-year plan may not be enough to get this project to the finish line. So that's something our on-call engineering firm is going to be looking at closely and providing us with some cost estimating guidance on. Moving on next to the city of Manchester, one of the top priorities for the city in this 10-year plan update cycle, and it meshes well with what we've noticed in our regional travel demand model in particular, is that the area including 2nd Street and I-293 between exit 5 to the 101 interchange is going to basically, our model is showing that that's going to continue to be a bottleneck with capacity issues. The exit 4 interchange is right in the middle of that area. 2nd Street, exit 4, and I-293 are all kind of inextricably linked in that area. And in particular, after the completion of the exit 6 and 7 reconstruction project, this will become an even a bigger bottleneck potentially. So the city has requested an engineering study of this entire location, and that is consistent with DOT also. DOT, if you remember, New Hampshire DOT, when the had released a white paper in I think 3 years ago when toll increase was being proposed, a white paper about what improvement needs they envisioned being needed in the future on the turnpike system. And one of the things that they noted in that white paper is that this particular area here, looking at I-293 and 2nd Street between exit 5 and the 101 interchange, they called it the next wave of turnpike needs that is at capacity during the peak hours of the weekday. And DOT had estimated, had identified the need to conduct exactly this type of study in that white paper at a cost of approximately $2 million. And we have had some initial conversation with DOT about this project, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. The second project proposal submitted by the City of Manchester in this cycle is looking at the I-93 exit 8 interchange. And this is kind of the Wellington Road, Bridge Street interchange with 93. Not necessarily looking at a reconfiguration of the interstate or the interchange itself, but really looking at how to improve the function of 3 intersections. That being Wellington Road and the I-93 northbound ramps, Wellington Road and the I-93 southbound ramps, and the adjacent intersection of Bridge Street and Mammoth Road. So the city has seen some capacity issues with these 3 intersections, and we're looking at a combination of potentially adaptive signal control technology, as well as targeted capacity improvements at some of these intersections. And this is one that is in our, in our current regional long range plan, we have identified the exit 8 interchange as needing some improvements along these lines. Although what exactly that would entail, we're going to need some engineering assistance for. So this is another project that we are assigning to our on-call engineering firm to take a look at what capacity improvements might be warranted at those intersections and whether those intersections are potentially candidates for adaptive signal control technology. And of course, what that project would cost and what benefit it would have on capacity at the in this area. And in particular, this area is has become a focus in part due to a recent development proposal nearby that resulted in a traffic impact study showing some potential capacity issues and exceeding the volume to capacity ratio in this whole area. So it's definitely an important consideration for the city and meshes with what's in our regional transportation plan, which is identifying also the exit 8 area. So this is, like I say, this is one where we're going to ask our on-call engineering firm for some scoping and cost estimating assistance. The final project, also from the City of Manchester, is looking at the intersections of US Route 3, which is called Hooksett Road in this particular northern part of the city, and its intersection with Campbell Street, as well as the adjacent intersection of Campbell Street and Hamel Drive. So this is a project that has had some significant homework done already. In particular, the City of Manchester has already, a number of years ago, commissioned some engineering assistance from Hoyle Tanner Associates to look at these 2 intersections. And so we do have a plan set, a preliminary engineering plan set that shows what is envisioned at these 2 intersections, being a capacity improvement for Hooksett Road and Campbell Street and a roundabout conversion at Campbell Street and Hamel Drive. So we are going to, we've submitted those plans to our on-call engineering firm, the ones that were developed by Hoyle Tanner, and we're asking our engineering firm to do a peer review of those plans and give us a cost estimate for what implementing that project or constructing that project would be in today's dollars. So this is a location where we do have some idea about what exactly needs to happen there, but we don't have is a current cost estimate. I've mentioned on-call engineering a number of times over the past few minutes. We have entered into a contract with VHB for on-call engineering work for this 10-year plan update cycle. And we are in the process of developing a task order with VHB to look at 5 projects that I've mentioned here, 5 of those 7 projects, that being the roundabout in Deerfield, the rail trail expansion in Derry, the 128 and 28 intersection in Londonderry, exit 8 in Manchester, and the Hooksett Road and Campbell Street project in Manchester. William Rose, I think, is on the call, and shortly, a few minutes ago, we completed our negotiations for this task order with VHB, and I have submitted that to William for his review and approval, and hopefully we'll be able to get VHB moving on that engineering work within the next day or two, if everything works out with our task order. And so we're honing in, and VHB will be starting on this work shortly. I mentioned earlier that one of our key milestones here is that we are required to develop and submit an initial short list of projects to DOT. This is kind of an early heads up for them about the projects that we're looking at in this 10-year plan cycle. It's not a final set of priorities, but really is an early notification to DOT about what projects we're looking at. So in order to develop that short list of projects, our technical advisory committee, what we call our TAC, already appointed a subcommittee to work with staff on doing an initial review of those projects. That subcommittee was comprised of members of our TAC that do not represent communities or agencies that have active project proposals. So thanks very much to our subcommittee that worked with us to do an initial evaluation, that being Dick Snow of Candia, Linda Kuhnhart from Francistown, as well as Lori Makaravich from MTA. They spent an afternoon walking through in great detail the particulars of these different projects to help us do that kind of initial evaluation. But just keep in mind, our initial evaluation can change as we learn more about these projects through the scoping and cost estimating process. And like I said, those initial priorities could change. Our final regional priorities are not due until March 31st. So we do have some time to continue to finalize exactly what our priorities are. But in terms of initial priorities, our subcommittee's evaluation looked like this. The I-293 2nd Street engineering study in Manchester really rose up as a high priority for the region as a whole. I have noted here on the right that is a turnpike project, and we'll talk about the implication of what that means in a moment. But that I-293 and 2nd Street engineering study definitely raised up as a high priority. Our 2 existing 10-year plan projects then follow, that being the Bedford Route 3 project, as well as the Londonderry Route 28 and 128 project. And so both of those were evaluated very, very well by our committee, and which is a good thing, because those have already been identified as priorities for the region through previous 10-year plan cycles. So adding supplemental funding to those projects is definitely going to be a big consideration in this 10-year plan update cycle. And then depending on the amount of supplemental funding that's needed for those projects, then we have the potential to add new projects to the plan within our $8.5 million allocation. So the new projects, the Derry Rail Trail project ranked very well, followed by the I-93 exit 8 interchange in Manchester, the Hooksett Road and Campbell Street projects in Manchester as well, and then the Deerfield roundabout conversion. But again, these are just, an initial look at things, and these priorities could certainly change in advance of March 31st. And we'll be talking more in the coming months as we learn more through the engineering process and through discussions with DOT. You'll be hearing more about these projects as we start to hone in on what our final priorities are early in the new year. I do want to note that one of these projects is not like the others, and that is indeed the I-293 Second Street engineering study in Manchester. That is a turnpike project. It takes place on the turnpike. And when we're talking about programming our regional allocation of $8.5 million, that regional allocation is federal funding. And DOT, generally speaking, has a policy that the turnpike system is supposed to be self-sustaining with turnpike funds. Turnpike funds are generally, the revenues that are paid by toll payers, toll revenue. So because of that, the DOT generally avoids using federal funding on the turnpike system. So, ultimately, it's going to be up to the Department of Transportation as to whether or not this project gets funded in the 10-year plan, and what their turnpike funding and turnpike projects are going to look like. DOT has expressed a willingness to discuss this study with us and consider it, but they also note, and I think it's important that we all recognize that turnpike funds may be fully subscribed just by getting their existing slate of projects done. And toll revenues are also have been under pressure, under some significant pressure due to reduced travel from the COVID-19 pandemic. So DOT is facing some unique fiscal constraints with the turnpike system because of the effect of COVID on travel patterns on the turnpike system and how that's affecting toll revenues. So I think it's important that we keep that in mind. But like I say, DOT has expressed a willingness to discuss this project with us, and we will have those discussions and see where they lead. But I just want to note that caveat of turnpike projects not being like the other projects, this particular project not being like the others on our list. Where are we at right now? Like I say, we have an initial sense of what our regional priorities may end up looking like. But work continues on these projects, including engineering scoping and cost estimating. Our initial priorities are going to potentially evolve and are subject to change as we learn more about the projects. Final priorities, as I mentioned, are due March 31st. All of the proposed projects that we've received, we are considering to be still on the table and are still being evaluated, as we talked about with our on-call engineering work. The I-293 and Second Street study is going to require further conversations with DOT, and we're not quite sure what the path forward for that project is at this point, but we're going to talk with DOT in more detail about that. And also the amount of supplemental funding that may be needed for the Londonderry Route 28 and 128 intersection improvement project is going to be a key factor in determining how many of those newly proposed projects we're going to be able to fund in this 10-year plan update cycle. So that's essentially where we're at right now with the 10-year plan process. And I know that was a lot of content to go through, but hopefully you found it informative and somewhat interesting, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Maybe I covered it all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. And thank you for being on the subcommittee and diving into the level of detail that we did on those projects.
Do we have any questions for Nate?
Just one question. This is Deb Munson. For like the Exit 8 proposal, the funding because it includes both city and like turnpike related work. The funding for that is a combination of Manchester's funding and DOT, or it's entirely the DOT 10-year plan.
You're talking about the Exit 8 project, the Wellington Road intersections?
Yes, yes, yeah.
Yeah, we have no reason to think that would be subject to that turnpike issue. That's really focused on Wellington Road and those interchanges. We have no reason to think that would not be, eligible for federal funding, and our impression is that we're going, if we end up funding that project, that would be a valid use of our federal allocation.
Okay, thanks.
Just for the record, we have Bill Herman has joined our ranks from Auburn. Also, Dick Marshall from Hooksett, and someone on the screen named P. Cakes, who I didn't let in for a long time. I think that's Patrick Bayan from Francistown. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's my old childhood nickname.
P. Cakes. Well, that is why I did not let you in, but I'm going to rename you right now to Patrick Cakes.
Thanks. I appreciate that. I'll have to update my phone name.
All right.
All right, so thank you, Nate. Moving on to the next agenda item is congestion management process. So, Carl?
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay? I'm trying to share my screen here.
Your sound is a bit wonky.
A little bit wonky.
Yeah, it's got a lot of background noise.
There's none in this room. All right, just click the slideshow button. Let's see what happens here. Okay, can everybody see a
Yes.
intro slide and hear me okay? All right. Well, for some of you, this is going to be a recap from the TAC meeting, I believe, but also just want to let you know that this is a somewhat abbreviated version because it was hard to get through at TAC. This is a culmination of over a year of work, and what we're really going to cover are the 9 corridors, routes throughout the region, and our findings from travel time data. So this is, what you're seeing here on the first slide is just kind of a sample. There's a bunch of different routes that all go through Manchester, and I'll translate this a little bit before we get into it too deep. So just as a reminder, the CMP is a requirement by federal highway. It's an 8-step process, and I'll cover that in the next slide. We've developed a subset of all the roads in the region that comprise our CMP network. And that was somewhat on that map you just saw. The real meat of today's presentation is covering the strategies for each of the 9 corridors. And as you'll see, sometimes these corridors intersect, and so there's some redundancy of strategies because they apply to both corridors. In those cases, I've tried to eliminate them. You will have seen them somewhere else, or you'll hear about them and when we get to that next route. Let's see, lastly, okay, let me just get right into it then. Here is the 8-step action process. Develop regional objectives. A lot of this stuff comes out of our long-range plan. We've defined the CMP network and the maps you're about to see, developed some multimodal performance measures, collecting data, travel time index data, actually analyze what's happening out there on the network, and then identify and assess strategies, and ultimately use this CMP as a tool to assist in programming projects for the 10-year plan and TIP. Over the long run, Federal Highway desires that we evaluate strategy effectiveness over time, meaning we take a look back and say, oh, those projects that we put in place, how did they do on relieving congestion for all modes? So again, we're talking today primarily about taking the objectives from the long-range plan and identifying congestion, the causes, applying congestion mitigation strategies. And we have a menu of them, and then evaluate them over time. So here's what you're used to seeing for the region. This is the region. This is the subset of the transportation network. It comprised, again, 9 different corridors, 2 interstates, 93 and 293, you know, the usual suspects you'd expect. Also the FE Everett Turnpike, state routes 101, 114, 328, and 102 and 111 to the south. I think you guys can see my cursor here a little bit. And then, of course, these cover areas in the downtowns of Manchester, Derry, and Goffstown Village. So travel time index. This is really a measure of the ratio of travel time in the peak travel period compared to the travel time in a free flow condition. Free flow, you can think of as, you know, maybe 2 in the morning when you can actually do the speed limit versus 8 in the morning when congestion, there's enough traffic under normal conditions, not necessarily under COVID conditions. We're going to be slowed down quite a bit. So this table kind of shows how we break it down and how it works in reality. Observed speed of 10 minutes and average free flow speed is 10 minutes. That's a ratio of 1. That's normal free flow conditions. Then you can see as you crank up to something taking 50% longer, a normal 10-minute trip takes 15 minutes. Once we're over 50% longer, we consider that congested. And we've translated this into the maps and the coloring. I'll go over that in a second. Congestion problems, many of these you'll be familiar with. In our region, it's mostly traffic volume, bottlenecks, AM and PM peak travel. Seasonal kind of lies on top of other things, like you know, when everyone's coming up on a long weekend or leaving on late on a Monday because of an extended holiday. Work zones, which we've all been familiar with over the last few years. I mean, they're everywhere all the time. Incidents, obviously the roadways get shut down, that slows things down. Traffic control devices themselves, whether or not they're signals or other traffic control devices, and of course, weather. And it differs across the corridors, the facilities, and time of day, along with a number of other factors. I mentioned the menu. These are the strategies that we came up with. We actually had a longer list, but these are the ones that were applied across the region. And there are 3 different categories: roadway management strategies. This is where we have some improvements to signals, whether or not new equipment or timing. Travel information devices like roadway signs, verbal message signs, and then kind of the behind the scenes communication networks, roadway monitoring, things that you don't necessarily see these days as a driver, but that stuff is coming into the vehicles as the IT progresses. Then transit and TDM strategies, parking management, park and rides, that kind of stuff, dedicated transit lanes, expanding transit service, optimizing signals to allow buses to go through and extending green time, and then things like open road tolling, electronic toll, fare collections. And then the long list of physical, actual infrastructure out there in the world that have go all the way from multimodal stuff like multi-use path, bicycle treatments on road, park and rides, access management along corridors. You're going to hear about some roundabouts, auxiliary lanes. I skipped intersection reconfigurations, grade separated intersections and interchanges, new travel lanes, new roadways, and then this last one, engineering and operations study, similar to the one that's in the proposed on 93 and associated in the current TYP proposals. We can't get to projects until you have some studies, so that's why that's in the mix here. So here's the.
May I ask a question?
Sure, of course.
Any consideration in discussing with the school systems? Because if you're on Route 28, Route 3, and some of these back roads, I've noticed over the years, because when I commute up to Concord, especially I enjoy the back roads, but the buses seem to stop almost at every single house. So I don't see any communication in there with school systems and bus companies and how to address the massive backups that happen because of all the school stops. And a lot of it starts at 6:30 till about 8:30 in the morning.
Yeah, that would fall under the category of an operational improvement. I'm not familiar with any conversations like that, but I've written it down, and I think that that's worth considering and seeing what the state has done, if anything, or what local communities are doing. But it's currently it's something that's not included as an operational improvement. But I've definitely noted it, and we're in the comment period, of course. So I'll look into it and try and get back to you and everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
All
So
right.
here's the, yes.
Just one thing on the school busing that would help, if you can look at tying it to sidewalk access. That's usually the #1 reason you keep making stops at every street like that. If the main road the school bus is on doesn't have a safe sidewalk, there's no place for kids to consolidate.
So they kind of would go together, is what I hear.
Yep.
All right, thank you. So here again is the legend, and I'm going to break this down just a little bit. You'll see that there's 2 parallel lines, and that's because we've got bidirectional roadways. So we've looked at congestion going both direction on every roadway, unless in some cases there's like Beach and Maple in Manchester, for example, they're one way. But generally roads, and in that case, they're parallel, so it looks the same in the mapping. The blue roads means it's a CMP network road, but it's not the one we're focused on at the moment. So the colored ones is the route we're focused on, and the blue one just shows that there's another network road that's intersecting. And so logically here, green means no congestion, light greenish yellow means a little bit, orange means moderate, and red means full-blown congestion. Lastly, the black ones are when the CMP route is outside the region, it means that at the edge of the map when the roadway goes beyond, and the signalized intersection is a dot. So we'll start with 93, and we've got both AM and PM peak maps here. Just to orient you, at the top, you'll see Bow on the leftmost panel. So it starts Bow, hooks at Toll Plaza, south to where 293 breaks off, and south to Manchester, the junction 101. Then it loops back up to the next panel to the right. And this one, you can see it links in, and here's 293 south of the city, and all the way south to exit 4 Derry, and then loop back up, down through Londonderry, Derry, Wyndham, and all the way to the line where it turns black at Salem. Now we've chosen to show our strategies on the PM peaks because in all cases, roughly, the peak congestion is worse in the PM condition. So for 93, we hit in all categories. We've got a roadway management strategy of strategy 1, traffic signal timing, coordination improvements. This would be for adaptive signal control framework, another means of signal coordination at 93 exit 8 and intersections with Wellington Road, which Nate covered. That's a project that's proposed in the 10-year plan. Transit and TDM strategies include the transit service expansion that's been in DOT's strategic statewide transit assessment, connecting Tuscan Village in Salem to downtown Manchester via exit 3 in Wyndham and exit 4 in Londonderry. Electronic toll conversion in Hooksett. And then lastly, physical infrastructure improvements. These include potential capacity improvements, again at Wellington Road at the 993 northbound and southbound ramps. And lastly, strategy 17, new grade separated interchanges down at here at exit 4A, which we all know is in pause mode right now, but has been a long time in the works. So that's 93. 293, the L-shaped roadway to the north, starting here at the junction with I-93, following the west side of the river, where the exit 567 projects will be. And then, of course, connecting at 101 and the Everett Turnpike going east, paralleling 101 until a junction with 93. And here we've got, again, all categories covered. Roadway management strategies, travel information devices, which DOT has been deploying. These are the variable message signs that display live travel time, incidents, and other information for travelers. Strategy 7 is a transit and TDM strategy, which in this case is transit service expansion, evaluating feasibility, establish commuter transit between the Manchester Mill Yard from the I-293 corridor, and then some physical infrastructure improvements. And I got these arrows here connecting Strategy 14, construct the pending reconfiguration of I-293 exit 6, exit 4, and the interchange with 293 New Hampshire Route 101 Everett Turnpike. You'll see here that this red here on 293 south to east here, we think that was primarily from the bridge construction when they were redoing the deck last summer. This data is from 2018 and 2019, but we know that that's a neck down, that's a bottleneck. So when we get things back to normal, and hopefully in a study in the future, as suggested in strategy 20 here, to really understand what's happening here. Strategy 17, new grade separated interchange at exit 7, which is up this way, of course. And lastly, the engineering study I just mentioned, which is, again, suggested in the 10-year plan, looking at the I-293 corridor from exit 5. And this is down to the FE Everett Turnpike. Consider interchange improvements. It's a little bit broader, widening the main line to 3 lanes, connecting up to the existing 3 lanes, basically all the way up through the corridor, and evaluate alternatives for reconfiguration of I-293 exit 4 and I-293 Route 101 FE Everett Turnpike interchange. A lot going on there, as you'll see as we go through these, a need for a comprehensive study. 101, this panel is a little odd because the corridor goes east, or actually northeast, southwest, then it hooks and goes east-west, and then it goes north past Manchester, and then east-west as you go towards the seacoast. So I had to put the notes related to this one on the next slide, but here's the PM. Again, a little bit more red. The easterly portion is still a little bit better in the PM actually compared to this is the AM, but I'll get right into it. Roadway management strategies for 101 include, again, traffic signal timing, coordination improvements, feasibility of implementing adaptive signal control at the intersection of 101, 114 Boynton Street in Bedford, and the adjacent signalized intersections. As far as transit and TDM, again, transit service expansion is a strategy for here. Implement the Route 101 commuter transit service envisioned in the DOT's strategic statewide transit assessment, connecting Portsmouth with Manchester. So this would be on that easterly portion of 101, including connections to the Portsmouth Transportation Center and park and ride facilities in those seacoast towns, Hampton, Epping, Raymond, well, inland too, of course. Physical infrastructure improvements for 101, new travel lanes, complete capacity expansion of New Hampshire Route 101 from Wallace Road in Bedford west of the Amherst Town line and perhaps beyond. Strategy 20, and this is again the engineering operations study at that big junction of 101, 114 Boynton Street, as well as the 2nd Street and 293 corridor, the big interchange with FE Everett Turnpike. Which gets us to FE Everett Turnpike itself, not overly congested. The AM, PM gets a little bit heavier. Again, this is a bottleneck. There's that ramp again. Not exactly sure what's going on, but the strategies we're recommending include roadway management strategies, again, travel information devices on the turnpike, transit and travel demand management, electronic toll, all electronic tolling at the Bedford Toll Plaza. And lastly, new travel lanes, physical infrastructure improvements, complete construction of the main line expansion to 3 lanes in each direction from exit 8 Nashua to the 293 101 FE Everett Turnpike interchange. 114, moving right along. Another odd corridor to lay out in a map. This is, Henniker to the northwest, follows kind of southeast into New Boston, connecting ultimately to Goffstown Village here in the middle pane. And we come down all the way to, this is a little bit of overlap here, all the way through Bedford to the intersection we've been talking about with 101, where the end of the most recent construction in Bedford is finished. Same thing. This is, again, a little bit of comparison between the AM and PM. The strategies for this corridor, again, traffic signal timing, coordination improvements, adaptive signal control at the 101, 114 Boynton Street and adjacent intersections, transit and TDM, extend commuter bus service along 114 corridor linking Ware and Goffstown to Bedford and Manchester. A park and ride facility, identify a potential park and ride facility along the Route 114 corridor, and link that up with transit. Study the feasibility of developing lots with access to the trail, to the rail trail through there, potential commuter bus stop locations. And lastly, physical infrastructure improvement strategies. Again, strategy 20, the engineering and operations study for the 114-101 corridor. Currently, we've got one going from Henry Bridge Road in Goffstown. It's going to start imminently. Identify some potential operational and capacity improvements, and then support an engineering study that would consider grade separated design alternatives at the intersection of 101, 114, and White Street in Bedford.
Al?
Yes.
Question. On strategy 7,
yes.
Is that a memorandum of understanding with the different towns that if you extend the commuter bus service, the towns have to proportionally pick up a cost of running those commuter services?
If that strategy was, that would include the communities, of course, to, as far as that type of service being launched. Again, this is a strategy concept. I can't remember if it's in a plan currently or a concept in a plan, but it's, yeah, it would certainly, to answer your question, it would certainly require, I'm pretty sure, some type of local involvement and match to get that going.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Moving right along, US Route 3, this is 3 and 28 are probably the most complicated corridors. And in the report, they're divided into 3 sections, a northerly section, a downtown section, and a southerly portion. So when you look at the report, you'll see there's the strategy recommendations get much more specific. But again, just to give you a sense for what we're doing here, we've shortened it and abbreviated the strategies in this presentation. There's a lot more specificity in the report. Again, the PM peak, active roadway strategies here, strategy 1. Again, there's a lot of signals. I think there's 14 at least, maybe more than that. Upgrade the signals and controllers as needed. Consider signal improvements for pedestrian and bicycle movement, traffic. TDM and transit signal priority. That's where you put special devices at the signal controllers and the signal heads and within the buses. And when a bus approaches a light that's about to turn yellow, it actually allows the green time to stay open long enough to let the bus through, which makes arrival times more dependable for buses and the riders. And physical roadway capacity improvements. On-street bicycle treatments, study and implement bicycle facilities, encourage mode shift for trips in downtown Manchester. That would include to and from downtown on Route 3. And strategy 14, intersection turn lanes, provide overhead signage and more distinct turn lane markings at intersections. Again, this is a subset of a much more extensive list for US Route 3. New Hampshire Route 28, this is the AM condition. This is the PM condition. Here, I'm sorry, this font gets pretty small, but again, there's a lot more here, but I'll do the best I can. Starting at the top in downtown, again, this is Beach and Maple, traffic signal equipment modernization, upgrading signals to accommodate transit, pedestrians, and bicycle capabilities, and the bus transit priority we already talked about. Coordinate with crosswalk phases. Strategy 5, access management. At the intersection of Hooksett Road, Route 3, Beach Street, and Webster Street, some potential for some closing some curb cuts and improving access there. TDM, travel demand management. Strategy 10, transit signal priority, as mentioned above, for the buses. Strategy 13, add some on-street bicycle facilities, provide appropriate on-street bicycle markings, protected and unprotected lanes, shared lanes, etc. And lastly, physical roadway capacity, strategy 22, new roadway, implement the exit 4A recommendations that impact this intersection. Now we're on to the most southerly routes, Route 102 and 111. Let's see if I can, at 102 coming up from, let's see how this is running. Yeah, this is to the southwest, to the northeast, coming up from Hudson through Londonderry, connecting to exit 4 with 93. And we drop down a panel Again, go through the exit 4. You can see there's a little bit of orange here in the AM. Connect through downtown Derry, where intersection is 28, and out to the Derry Rotary in East Derry. And then onward, once you get past that, it's pretty good, both in the AM and PM. The flow is pretty good on 102 towards Raymond and 101. Here's the PM condition. Goes downhill quite a bit. So we've got quite a bit of congestion around exit 4, both in both directions, both approaches in the PM. Kind of ends at about 28 in downtown Derry, and then again, as you get east of the East Derry Rotary, 102 gets pretty free flow even during the peaks. Here we've got strategy 1, where possible, improve the traffic signal timing, coordination improvements. And we've got here specifically looking at adaptive control, 102, I'm sorry, New Hampshire Route 102 from exit 493 to New Hampshire Route 128. It's basically Derry. Some transit and travel demand strategies, transit service expansion. This is again from the NHDOT's Strategic Statewide Transit Assessment, connecting Tuscan Village and Salem to downtown Manchester via exit 3 in Wyndham and exit 4 in Londonderry, which could help with congestion during the peaks and all day long. Lastly, physical infrastructure improvements. We've got on-street bicycle treatments recommended here, improving on-street bicycle treatments on 102 in downtown Derry, including considering bicycle lanes and adding bicycle racks. And lastly, strategy 18, new travel lanes. Add travel lanes on 102 from exit 4 I-93 to New Hampshire Route 128. It's a very short segment, actually. Which brings us to our last route in the congestion management network. Route 111, again, this is a southwest, top panel, southwest toward northeast, crosses 93, goes through Wyndham, goes through Salem, and then up the bottom panel shows it going to the extent of our region, which is at the Derry-Atkinson line in the bottom panel. Fairly moderate congestion in the PM, the AM. And the PM, you see the red show up. So what we'll cover here is, this is the approaches to exit 3, Wyndham. Currently, I'm again not sure how much of this is related to the construction that's been happening there, but this is 18-19 data, so it's probably a little lingering construction there, if not confusion about exactly what to do. The recommendations, strategies here is, again, a lot of signals. So strategy 1, traffic signal timing coordination improvements, evaluating feasibility of adaptive control or signal performance measures from 111 to Route 28 intersection to exit 3, I-93. Transit and TDM, again, transit service expansion, develop transit service along Route 111 corridor linking Salem and Nashua. This is out of the New Hampshire DOT Strategic Statewide Transit Assessment. And lastly, some physical infrastructure improvements. There's a current study or concept plan for roundabout conversion on 111, converting the intersections of 111 Wall Street, 111 with Wyndham Village Green, and 111 with North Lowell Road, as well as 111 with Hardwood Road. So quite a few intersections on that 111 corridor to convert to roundabouts. That's an existing concept plan that's out there. And strategy 18, new travel lanes, adding travel lanes on 111 from exit 3 at 93 through the intersection of 111 and Hardwood Road. That's it for the overview. I know that all of you were sent the draft report, and we encourage you to dig into it, and please feel free to contact me with any questions, your concepts, your ideas, or anything you see. In the meantime, we can take some questions and perhaps have a discussion if we've got time. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Any questions? We are running kind of short on time here. All right, thank you. All right, moving on to other business. Federal Highway, WA, MPO review. Nate?
Yeah, this item is really just a shameless plug, I guess. Every 4 years, we our federal partner agencies at Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration conduct a review of the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission's process. So we get these reviews every 4 years, and our next review happens to be coming up in November. Our last review was back in 2016. So on November 19th, Thursday, November 19th at 9:30 a.m., which is our normal TAC meeting time, Thursday, November 19th at 9:30 a.m., our TAC will be hosting Federal Highway Administration. Most of the agenda will be turned over to our colleague, Paul Maloney from the Federal Highway Administration New Hampshire Division, and he is going to kind of facilitate a discussion about how things work with the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission's planning process, and just kind of he'll ask a series of questions, and you know, he's looking for feedback on how things work and how we're doing serving, you know, our municipalities. So I would hope, and we will send a notice out prior to that meeting to remind everyone, but we certainly invite and encourage any MPO members or commissioners to participate in that meeting on November 19th at 9:30 to share your thoughts about how we're doing here at the commission, and you know, lend any insights to our reviewers at Federal Highway and Federal Transit that you may have. So again, we'll send a notice out just reminding everybody that that November 19th at 9:30 is our TAC meeting where Federal Highway will be having this discussion. And like I say, we certainly encourage everybody to participate, and stay tuned for more details.
Okay, thank you, Nate. We have a motion to adjourn the MPO.
So moved.
Seconded.
I think that was Mike Whitten and Linda Kuhnhart, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Should we do a thumbs up for our vote? Okay, good. Thank you. Got it.
Find my icon, but yes.
Just so long as I. And for the record, we have Brian Lord joined us from Bedford. Hi, Brian. Thanks for coming in. All right, Jeff.
All right, we'll call to order the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission. First action is the meeting minutes of September 22nd, 2020.
Move we approve.
Who is that, please?
Dick Marshall.
Dick Marshall.
A second, John O'Connor.
Thank you, John. You got that, Linda? Okay, so I'll do the roll call and the minutes simultaneously. Bill Herman, Auburn.
Yes.
For the record, Jeff Porter left. He did send everyone a chat message that he had to leave. So we'll move to Bedford. Bill DeShaco.
Aye.
Charlie Fairman.
Aye.
Bill Jean.
Here, abstain.
Barbara Salvatore.
Aye.
Brian Lord.
Aye.
Candia, Al Hall, nice and loud, Al. Okay, thanks, Al. Dick Snow. Dick Snow, I don't know if you're muted. Don't hear you. You're muted. I see you.
Vote aye.
Thank you. Andrew Haddock, Chester.
Andrew Haddock, aye.
Thanks, Andrew. Deb Munson,
Aye.
Deerfield Bob Cody,
Yes.
Derry Jeff Moulton,
Aye.
John O'Connor,
Here and yes.
Francistown, we have Alfred Eisenberg,
Here and yes.
Linda Kuhnhart,
Here and yes.
Jennifer Vadney,
Here and abstain.
Patrick,
President and I.
thank you. Goffstown, Joanne,
Aye.
Barbara Griffin,
Aye.
Dave Pierce. Dave, you with us? You're muted if you're talking. Where are you? There you are. Dave, you're muted. All right, you have a thumbs up. Aye. Thank you. Hooksett, Cutler,
Abstain.
thank you. Dick Marshall,
Aye.
Londonderry, Brian,
Present and yes.
Arthur,
Here and yes.
Manchester, Peter Capano,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
Dan O'Neill.
Here and abstain.
Thanks, Dan. New Boston, Mark Sunan.
Abstain.
Where we have Tom Clow,
Aye.
and Wyndham, we have John Hiltz.
Yes.
Okay, and I believe that is all our commission voting members. All right, and if you could mute yourself, that'd be great. All right, if you're not speaking. Anyway, I think we're ready, Jeff, for our first speaker.
Yes, New Hampshire's energy management efforts. Chris, are you back with us?
I am.
All right. So we can hear you, and while you're setting up your screen, go ahead and share your screen, Chris. So since James Veo, our own James's vulnerability assessment, I have an echo. Anybody who's not talking, please mute, or I may mute you. Still having an echo. Anyway, since then, we've done a variety of presentations on energy and vulnerability, on climate change, on resilience. And so now we're capping it off with Chris and New Hampshire's energy management efforts. So take it away, Chris.
All right. Thank you very much, Sylvia, for the invitation to speak today. Some of you may remember me. I used to be a transportation and energy analyst and attended both the TAC meetings and the MPO meetings as a representative from New Hampshire DES several years ago. Currently, I'm the Climate and Energy Program Manager, and my portfolio of work covers everything from working with the New Hampshire Local Energy Solutions Conference or work group, helping municipalities up to working with the New England and Eastern Canadian states on climate and energy planning. One of the things that I also do is help manage the staff working group for the State Government Energy Committee, which I'll talk about a little bit more today. But that'll be the principal focus of my remarks. And it is focused on how the state government is leading by example. And this is really just a snapshot of our work. The presentation I'll be sharing today represents the work of several different agencies and numerous staff that are all working together to help reduce our energy consumption, principally our fossil fuel energy consumption within the state. So again, this is going to be a really high level presentation, but we'll just talk at first about the policy and process, how the state is going about working on energy fossil fuel management in buildings and fleets. From the policy side, talking about some specific projects on the building side of that and planning going forward. Stepping into look at our fleet work in a little bit more of a, or as well. One of the things I would note is if there are any questions, I'm certainly available to go into more detail during a question and answer period that I understand will follow this presentation. But my contacts are available at the end, as are key contacts for state staff that may be able to address your even more detailed questions at a later time. So the state has been working on its energy goals since an executive order was passed back in 2004. This is just a list of the executive orders and one particular bill that was passed in 2010 following the release of the New Hampshire Climate Action Plan in 2009. But each of these executive orders ratcheted up and made more ambitious the targets for energy reduction in buildings within the state. And we saw the executive orders being issued in 2004, 2005, and 2011 fairly close together because the state was so successful in reducing its energy consumption. One thing that happened in Senate Bill 73 is it actually put some energy targets in statute. And so that required the state to achieve specific reductions by the year 2025. One of the important things that the Executive Order 2005-4 did, this was issued by Governor Lynch, and it set a target that we would reduce energy consumption in buildings by 10% below 2005 levels. But the most important things it did is it established a state energy manager position, which we still have to this day. And that office, the state energy manager's office, has been increasing in size gradually. And there have also been supported by a number of other staff within state government, including myself, members of the Office of Strategic Initiatives, and the Department of Health and Human Services. But it also established an enterprise energy management system, which is a massive database that tracks our energy use in every single building, as well as our water and other utility use for all the way back to 2009. We did get data for 2005 because that's the year that we measure everything against. But really going back through, we almost kind of had to do a forensic analysis of our bills to establish a regular pattern of adding in utility bills as they came in so that we could measure energy consumption year to year and measure our progress within buildings, within agencies, and within the state as a whole to see how we were doing against the target for 10%. What happened is in 2009, the energy program manager was made a little bit more formal, and then the goals became a little bit more ambitious, and our timeline became more ambitious. Executive Order 2016-03, this is one that we currently operate under when we're managing our energy within the state. It affects both buildings, but it was also the first to include a fleet target. And so these are the goals that we currently have in place today. And it is a building fossil fuel energy use target, and it's considered an energy intensity target. So everything is converted to BTUs. So we don't measure in gallons, we don't measure in therms for the various fuels that are delivered, but we convert everything to a common unit of measure, kilo-BTUs or 1,000 BTUs. And then it's averaged to cost the square footage for state occupied buildings. So that's one of the things is these goals only apply to state-owned buildings because those are the buildings that we can control. We are looking at how we can better manage the energy consumption in leased space, but very often it's challenging to dictate the efficiency or energy performance of buildings that we seek to lease. For the state passenger fleet, we have set a target to reduce fossil fuel, or not fossil fuel, but actual greenhouse gas emissions 30% below our 2010 levels by 2030. But this executive order also went a little bit further and created a formal state government energy committee. It has representatives from the agencies that have the largest energy footprint. So those agencies such as the Department of Administrative Services, the Department of Health and Human Services, that occupy the largest square footage in buildings and therefore consume the largest amount of energy, and therefore would either be most affected or see the greatest benefit from energy management efforts within the state. there had been prior versions of a committee that oversaw our work towards energy management within the states, but this is the first time that the committee was specifically spelled out and that staff were given a support role. So previously there had been, before the State Government Energy Committee, there had been staff working kind of side by side with state agency heads, like the Commissioner of DES, the director of the then Office of Energy and Planning, which is now the Office of Strategic Initiatives, attending meetings and working through kind of some very granular work. Since the passage of Executive Order 2016-03, the State Government Energy Committee has been more elevated to kind of the level of the MPO Commission, where we now have state staff that meet on a monthly basis, and those staff are from our Department of Administrative Services, Environmental Services, OSI, and DHHS. We put together kind of programs and projects and work through various assignments given to us by the State Government Energy Committee, and then bring that to them quarterly for them to review, approve, or ask for further details. And one of the things that we've seen happen since 2016 is that staff are working with the State Government Energy Committee, but then the State Government Energy Committee is beginning to work more and more with the governor and the legislature to ensure that some of the content that we are developing, some of the ideas that we're developing, is put into statute to kind of create a virtuous cycle that allows us to get more work done. So an example of that can be seen from this year, despite the fact that we were in the middle of a pandemic and that the legislature had a very challenging year working through the 1,000 or so bills that they started with. One omnibus bill, HB 1245, was passed and signed into law going into effect in August. Sections 44 through 61. So this is a very large bill, but it contained numerous pieces of legislation, one of which had been developed over the course of 2019, excuse me, by the State Government Energy Committee in collaboration with the staff group that I'm a part of. And it specifically amended sections of state law that better allowed us to manage energy use. And this would have an impact on projects that we do now, but it would also allow us to be more flexible in how we manage our energy consumption for the next few decades, because it provided language that was more expansive and allowed for innovation to be incorporated into our work, even if we didn't quite know what that innovation might entail. So new terms that were added, because we were actually working under language that had first been put into place back in 1993. So new terms that were added were cogeneration, fuel switching, the term renewable energy, which surprisingly was not in there, energy storage, and strategic electrification. But then there was also a catch-all phrase that allowed for additional technologies to be used as they became available. A key inclusion in HB 1245 was the authorization that at the end of every 2-year or every biennium, 50% of the dollars remaining in every agency's energy utility budgets that were not federal dollars or were not specifically coming from sources that did not allow it would be shifted or into a dedicated energy fund for investment in cost-effective energy projects. Now, this is something that we spent a considerable amount of time discussing in 2019. Do we set that at 100% of the energy? Do we set it at 25% of the energy budgets? But 50% was determined to be an effective signal to agencies that if they kind of ratchet down and save energy throughout the course of a 2-year budget cycle, they can be rewarded with some of those savings going back into what we call the State Energy Investment Fund. And those dollars can then be reinvested in their buildings to further reduce energy consumption within their buildings. But at the same time, a portion of the energy savings would return to the general fund and be returned to taxpayers, so that there would be this kind of continued benefit where as the money that goes into the State Energy Investment Fund is invested in future energy projects, that would result in future additional savings for taxpayers. There was also an update to the language that emphasized the use of life cycle cost analysis in our building and leasing decisions. This means that agencies that were looking at buildings, looking at designs, were instructed to look not just at the first cost of the building, but were instructed to look at the entire costs across the entire lifespan of that building. Because the state does build some of its own facilities and has, ownership of those buildings that can last decades, and in some cases, could be a century or more. What we see is the potential for us to realize significant energy savings by looking at perhaps a higher upfront cost, a higher capital cost, but investing in energy efficiency, strategic electrification, or other energy management tools that reduce significantly the energy costs over the life of the building, and therefore represent a much lower total cost of ownership for the state. By adding this to state statute, agencies are now required to take this sort of analysis in making their decisions. Another significant project that came out of the work of the SGEC that's different from kind of the legislative side was the development of a performance contracting process. It's one where we, rather than go out to bid and say that we want contractors to come in and supply certain types of energy efficiency or other projects, we actually ask them to come in and say, we want you to enhance the energy performance of these buildings as much as you possibly can, and you're going to be competing against other bidders, and you're going to be scored against the total amount of fossil fuels that you are proposing to reduce and the total cost that you are proposing as well. So we look at a very balanced means of achieving our goals, but doing it cost effectively, but also allowing the market to help indicate what might be the best solutions, the most innovative solutions to our building management concerns, because quite honestly, state government staff don't know everything about what's out there in terms of energy technologies. And the firms coming in have access to consultants as well as in-house expertise. So when we did an energy performance contract on Hazen Drive, starting back in 2012, this is the DOT building, the DMV, which many of you may have been to, as well as the building that I work in, and the Department of Safety. These represented 4 very large buildings with considerable energy consumption, principally natural gas and electricity. And we sent out a contract or a request for proposals where we instructed them to maximize fuel savings. We encouraged them to be as creative as possible. And then that allowed us to compare projects, even though they were extremely different, because we were looking at fossil fuel savings, but the fossil fuel savings had to be paid back within a 20-year period of time, which is allowed by New Hampshire state law. But when you own buildings for 50 to 100 years, a 20-year payback makes quite a lot of economic sense. So what we ended up seeing is that for the Hazen Drive projects in total, the total project cost came to about $13 million, but the estimated annual savings was nearly $1 million. And it had a payback of 13 years, 16 years, almost 17 years when you factor in an interest rate of just over 2.5%. And so the state had gone out and financed it independently. But the important value for us is not only are we able to see this remarkable cost savings, but that across the entire 4-building complex on Hazen Drive, we saw a fossil fuel reduction of nearly 70%. And it was greater than 80% within one particular building, because we had replaced almost all of the natural gas with a wood chip boiler that was state of the art and had very, very low air quality impacts. This was important primarily because we needed them to meet state standards, but it was also heating the building in which New Hampshire DES was in. So one of the other things that is important to the work that we're doing is not just coming up with policy not just coming up with projects, but we also need to be tracking and reporting. And so something that's been occurring for years is we have an annual energy report that we've been issuing since just about 2010. This is available publicly if anyone is interested. It evaluates total building consumption, and it is looking back on and scoring each year's energy consumption against that base year of 2005. This is incorrect. It should say through fiscal year 19, which is when we had the last report through. And I was working on some of the analysis for the fiscal year 20 report that we will be issuing before or just about January of 2021. And the report reports against our fossil fuel energy use intensity reduction goal. And most recently, included documentation of the impact of the conversion of the Concord steam to natural gas, which we realized a significant cost savings, even though it did have a slight negative impact on our total fossil fuel combustion, because Concord steam was run partly on biomass. So this is a slide that for the sake of time, I'm gonna kind of skip through, but it does note that there's quite a lot that goes into our calculations. The spreadsheet that we use to track energy allows us to compare apples to apples across all the different buildings. As I mentioned, we measure in kBTUs and not in terms of gallons or therms, but there's quite a lot that goes into it. I just want to pause for 1 second. Sylvia, how am I for time? And you're on mute.
Great. Well, we did let everyone know we would go a little over. Do you think you can wrap it up in 10 minutes?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So I think the important things that we would take from the work that we've been doing in this figure here, it shows it's just looking at energy and square footage. And it's a little bit confusing when we try to crowd too much into this. The total energy consumption is the darker blue, and it's to the left-hand side for each of the two twin columns, and the total fossil fuel energy consumption is to the right. So remember, this is total fossil fuel energy consumption, but the line actually represents the square footage of, so the total square footage of building space occupied by the state. So compared to 2005, one thing that we've seen is our total energy consumption has gone down. We've also seen our fossil fuel energy consumption go down. But what we have seen is that there's been a significant increase in the total square footage occupied between 2005 and more recently between 17, 18, and 19. And so what that means is, even though the square footage has gone up, our total energy consumption has been going down, which means that our fossil fuel energy use consumption on a per square foot basis has dropped in some years by almost 20% compared to 2005. And what that translates to is there's a significant economic benefit. Since 2005, our total energy consumption has gone up. What this shows is for each of the years, kind of the stacked columns representing the total consumption or the total costs for each of the different fuels. And our total energy costs did jump between 2005, 2017, 2018, and 2019. But that was principally because fuel prices rose and not because our energy consumption rose. If you remember from the previous figure, our energy consumption did actually drop overall. And one of the things that we would, though it appears to have shifted, but we estimate that we have avoided nearly $47 million in energy costs between 2009 and today. So about $4.7 million a year. 2019 will be a little bit interesting in terms of fiscal year 2019 because many of our buildings have been under occupied, but we'll have a bit of a challenge to figure out exactly how to present that as savings. Well, one of the things that we continue to see is that our energy has not shifted in 2019, even though it was a very cold winter. We had and had a lot of kind kind of heating and cooling degree days. So for those of you that are familiar, heating and cooling degree days are kind of measures of how much above and how much below certain temperatures the average temperature is. And that dictates the heating load and the cooling load that our buildings experience. And so one thing that we've seen is that our buildings are somewhat insulated against, no pun intended, the warmth of the summer and the cold of the winter, because our energy use has not gone up considerably or down considerably between 2017 and 2019, even though the heating degree days shifted by a factor of more than 10% between 17 and 2019. So that indicates that a lot of the work that we've been doing to insulate our buildings has an impact on our energy consumption in both the summer and the winter. But our work is not done. State statute requires that we put together energy conservation plans. And so most of the largest state agencies submit annual energy conservation plans that then our state energy manager uses to put together project plans for investments from either the state energy investment fund that I already talked about, or any other dollars that they may come into possession of, either through the budget process or grants that they might be able to get from the New Hampshire Saves program. And so in this case, they were able to estimate that they had $30.7 million in potential projects that would pay for themselves in almost 10 years from the last set of conservation plans that were submitted. We do this annually, and it allows us to kind of go through a planning process with each of the different agencies that we would not otherwise be able to. And lastly, I just want to touch on something that does affect you all. And as you know, the transportation sector is a very important part of the state's overall energy consumption. In 2005, transportation represented just 33% of our greenhouse gas emissions. But now in 2018, it's getting close to half of the greenhouse gas emissions and half of the energy consumed in the state. And so electric generation in terms of greenhouse gas emissions is shrinking as a measure of energy consumption and energy or fossil fuel emissions. So the state does have that goal of a 30% reduction below 2010 levels for greenhouse gas emissions from state fleet vehicles, not for the entire 1.3 million registered vehicles in the state. And so we've made efforts to improve the fuel economy of the 800 or so vehicles that the state does own and operate. New Hampshire DES has made a point of leading by example. We've installed electric vehicle chargers and have purchased plug-in hybrid electric vehicles and are looking to expand both the number of plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, but also purchase electric vehicles. The point there is previously they cost more to purchase, but the total cost of ownership was lower than the ownership costs associated with internal combustion engines, whether gas or diesel, because maintenance costs were remarkably low. When you've only got 20 to 30 moving parts in a car, there's not a lot to maintain besides windshield wipers and brakes, and occasionally repair the wheels, not repair, but replace the wheels. But the engines or the motors are almost 4 times more efficient than an internal combustion engine, which gives you a significant reduction in total fuel costs. So some of the things that we've been doing with state agencies is we have an annual energy conference and we host ride and drive events, because one of the principal issues that has caused electric vehicles to not make more rapid traction in terms of sales is that people just are unfamiliar with them and don't quite believe in their capability. And so getting state staff into these vehicles has built much more support for the vehicles themselves. In fact, last year we had a number of staff that drove the vehicles and then went home and bought them for themselves. And this is important because change can happen pretty fast. A century ago, we saw a transition where everyone was riding a horse and buggy, and within just over a decade, the transition to the internal combustion engine had been achieved. And that had significant advances in terms of a lot less manure on the ground, but it created other public health issues through the emission of air pollutants. Electric vehicles present a new opportunity to reduce air pollutants, improve air quality, but at the same time also offer a significant amount of cost and energy savings. And we're seeing that the electric vehicles are increasingly cost competitive or have reached parity with internal combustion engines, even for the first cost. So this will be my kind of last slide, and I can end this here. The Department of Administrative Services, we've been working with them over the past several weeks to update the Clean Fleets policy. And this is a requirement that vehicles meet a certain fuel economy standard, whether they're passenger cars, small SUVs, light duty, medium duty trucks, and that we will have vehicles that are offered that don't meet these standards, but agencies have to go through a waiver process in order to procure those vehicles. We recognize that not every vehicle that hits 41 or 40 miles per gallon for a passenger car is going to be suitable for what an agency needs. If it's fish and game and they need something that goes off-road, small SUVs or light duty trucks with high fuel economy might not be the perfect match. But we do ask every agency to go through a process of considering, is this the right size vehicle? How do we keep the fuel economy the highest possible so that we can keep those fuel consumption down on an annual basis, but at the same time, still make sure that each agency is able to complete their mission and meet the needs of our residents and businesses within the state. But we are also making sure that each agency does have the opportunity to look at the total cost of ownership, so that if they are comparing cars that might have a similar size or a similar range, not range, but a similar utility, but one might cost more than the other. If they see the total cost of ownership, they might realize that a hybrid, a plug-in hybrid, or an electric vehicle actually has a much lower impact on their budget, their agency's budget, over the course of the time that vehicles are expected to be owned by the state. And we just model 10 years, 150,000 miles. It's not always the case. But what is important for you all is if your municipalities are interested, you can actually buy vehicles off the state contract. I'm not 100% sure how that occurs, but I do know it does, and I can take steps to make sure that you're put in contact with the right individual to do that. There have been some staff changes at DAS, so we've lost contact with a few people. But what we hope to be able to see in the very short future is a vehicle index, and it will include all of the vehicles that state agencies can purchase and therefore municipalities can purchase. And it will list not only the vehicle, the vendor, it will also mention the first price and then the total cost of ownership, which will, as well as the fuel economy and perhaps the range if it's an electric vehicle. So out of the sake of time, I know I've taken a little bit more than I think I was allotted, but I want to pause there and stop for questions.
Hey, Chris, on the town of Derry, we use a database tool from the EPA to collect information about our buildings' performance and measure usage over time. Does your database is that a proprietary database, or do you use commercial?
So we have explored looking at using the EPA portfolio manager. So the analysis that we do for the inventory of our utility bills, I believe it's proprietary in-house and it's maintained by IT. What we end up doing is having to extract all of the data and then import it into our own tool to kind of make it work for us. And so that was something that staff had developed prior and that I've been maintaining since about 2010. But we have looked at the EPA portfolio manager, and if anyone is interested, they have lots of videos and tools and support online to help communities do that sort of work.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else have a question? Well, that was very informative. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for your time.
All right. Well, thank you, Sylvia, and thank you for the members of the commission. If you do have any questions, please let us know.
Great.
Awesome.
All right, so anything else before we adjourn?
Well, that's it for today. Thanks for everyone for hanging in there that long. All right.
And I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Right.
Sounded like John again.
And I will second it.
Thanks, Peter. Thumbs up on that, everyone.
All right, have a good
Lots
one.
of thumbs. Thanks,
Thank you all.
everyone. Double thumbs from Dave.
I know.
Take care.
Very
Bye,
well done.
everyone.
Bye.
Nice
Bye, Barbara. See you, everyone.